This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Global Village. I'm Buddy Kunanan. Now, you know, in this show, we take you around the world, you visit amazing places and get to meet interesting people. And we also talk about issues that impact the global community. Now, tonight is all about Scotland, and it's very significant today because in 2 days' time, we are going to celebrate the birthday of Robert Burns, or Robbie Burns. And he is the acknowledged, recognized national poet of Scotland and international cultural icon. And joining us to talk about this beautiful country, Scotland, I have some special guests lined up tonight. And the first one is Les Blair, and he is the chieftain of the St. Andrew Society right here in the Philippines. Les, welcome to Global Village.
Thanks for having me.
And you know, it's a pleasure to have you here in this very auspicious occasion. As I mentioned, we are celebrating Robbie Burns' birthday in 2 days' time. And you know, Scotland, amazing country. I've always been a big fan of Scotland, and it's a pleasure to have you here in the show to share this with our viewers, to share the wonders of your nation, of your country. Now, before we dive into the topic of Scotland, let's talk about you. Who is Les Blair, and what brings you to the Philippines?
What brings me to the Philippines is family. My wife is an Alonga, and for all the years we've been married, which is 30 years now, she always said she wanted to return to the Philippines. So my life has been in the oil and gas business. We lived and worked, and we met in Libya. We've lived and worked in Nigeria, in Vietnam, in Kurdistan, in northern Iraq, in Dubai, in India. So we've traveled the world, but we always wanted to come back. So many years ago, we planted a mango plantation in Guimaras. We built a house in Iloilo. She's from Iloilo itself. And it was time to come back. So now we run a number of businesses here. She's opened a Vietnamese restaurant in Iloilo because of her love of Vietnam. We have a Vietnamese chef there. We've set up a property company, and of course we have a mango farm.
Very nice, very nice. So the Philippines is your home for all intents and purposes.
It is our home, yes.
You're based here, from the highlands to the islands.
That is exactly correct.
Bravo, bravo, sir.
So when I was growing up, I didn't realise there was anywhere hotter than Scotland. But once I knew there was, that was it for me.
And you feel right at home in the Philippines?
I feel very much at home in the Philippines.
Very
yes,
good,
yes,
very
I love
good.
it.
Now, okay, let's talk about Scotland. Big topic when I talk about. Let's talk about Scotland. There's so much to talk about. And okay, let's start off. Is it a country? Because I mentioned it on air. I said it's a country, beautiful country. And but some people say it's a region or a country. Which is it?
Without going too deep into the political discussion, it certainly is a country. And it has always been a country. Everyone in the Philippines has seen the movie Braveheart, and that was the point in our history when we really became a country. So with that battle, the Battle of Bannockburn, when we won, we became a country. And we're still a country today. The United Kingdom is made up of 4 countries: Ireland, England, Wales, and Scotland. So we're always a country. We have our separate education system, we've got our separate legal system, and we have our separate culture. But we're part of the United Kingdom for now.
Yes. You know, most Filipinos' association with Scotland comes from cinema. And you mentioned Braveheart and a couple of other movies that have touched on this topic. Rob Roy kind of went into it. But movies like Braveheart, how accurate was that movie?
I believe it's very difficult to say if it's accurate or not. That there was a Scottish hero called William Wallace is definitely true. That he was one of the first revolutionary leaders in Scotland. That King Robert the Bruce won the Battle of Bannockburn, that is true. The little bits in between, who can say? No one was there. So, and at the time, very few people knew how to write. So those that knew how to write were largely writing in Latin, and so there's very little written history. It's much like when the Romans invaded Scotland.
Yes.
Scotland's the only country in Europe that the Romans invaded that they did not win. So
really?
the Romans withdrew from Scotland, and in fact they built a wall called Hadrian's Wall between Scotland and England.
Yes.
And if you like, that was the first time really the country had been separated. So there was now a wall between Scotland and England named after Emperor Hadrian. And there are many battles there that you read about which says that the Romans won. Well, the fact is the Scots couldn't write. We didn't have any ability to write at that time.
Yeah.
It was all tradition.
Yes.
So the Romans could write, and they wrote it. They won all the battles. But if they won all the battles, why did they leave? So
yes. And why build the wall?
And why build the wall?
Yes.
So I think that tells you that, in fact, Scotland won.
Yes,
so
that's
the Romans
a good point.
left.
That's a good point. And how interesting the entire Roman Empire, that the only people that they couldn't really conquer were the Scots. And that says a lot about the Scottish people, the Scottish nation.
We're a warlike nation. There's no doubt about that. And if you visit Scotland, 3,000 plus castles, that tells you its own story. We were at war with each other. So the clans, and the kilt represents the clan. So every clan wears a separate tartan. So, and you've got lots of sub-clans also, but they all have title to a tartan. So you can wear that tartan proudly. So I can wear 2 tartans. My mother's name was Leslie, and there's a Leslie Castle. And my father's name was Blair, and there was a Blair Castle. So, in fact, in Blair Athol today, there's still a private army. It's one of the only private armies in Britain. Not that it's used for warlike nature, but it's a traditional army from the past.
Well, I think anyone who's watched Rob Roy or who's watched even Highlander, very famous movies, or Braveheart, right? I mean, really, you saw the warlike nature of Scots. Well, why is it that Scottish people have this culture in them?
Personally, I think there's a number of reasons. Scotland, the land is quite inhospitable. It's inhospitable to learn a living, certainly in agriculture. So it's rocky, it's harsh, it's tough. And they found out by this interfighting between the clans that actually they were quite good at it. So lots of soldiers became soldiers of fortune. In the Middle Ages in Europe, Scottish soldiers, we fought for everybody. So we fought for Russia, we fought for France, we fought for everyone. It was about adventure. You were being paid, so you had an income, you had adventure, you were able to travel. And I think the travel thing maybe is, for me, one of the biggest reasons why they did so. And Scots always like faraway places, and that's why you'll find Scots everywhere. There are 10 times more people that identify as being Scottish outside of Scotland than there actually are in Scotland itself.
And that's very interesting because, you know, Scottish people are basically mountain folk, right? We're the Highlands and all of that. And what is it about that makes you yearn for far shores, for
Well,
far
think,
continents?
I think one of the things, Buddy, is that, you know, when you're growing up in a cold climate, you have to really work to survive. Unlike in the Philippines, where you can just sit in your Bayakubo and, you know, eat your coconut, you cannot do that in Scotland. So you have to work to survive, to thrive. So there's a certain stubbornness, there's a hard work. And
Yes.
we believe in Scotland we have a very strong work ethic. So, and that work ethic comes from who we are genetically, where we grew up, and who we are. And if you meet Scots around the world, they're some of the hardest working people you'll ever come across. And that's why in this part of the world, in Asia, many trading companies set up here. So in Hong Kong, for instance, Jardine Matheson, Swire Pacific, they're all Scottish companies. HSBC, in Scotland we call that the home for Scottish bank clerks. So these are all Scottish entities. They were formed
Amazing.
by Scots. So and the Scots were trading folk, but we came from a small country. So we didn't have a large army or a large navy to support us. We're a relatively small country. But that didn't stop us becoming, you know, we traveled everywhere. And in fact, many of the signatories for the US Declaration of Independence were of Scottish origin. So,
So definitely trailblazers, no? It's because of this adversity that you guys have had to face in your history and in your lives because of the geography and terrain of your land has really made you guys hardy folk and just, you know, willing to take on challenges and things like that. No?
that's absolutely correct.
And you know, Les, I have a book actually that I've begun to read. I actually bought it many years ago, but I never really got down to reading it until a few weeks ago. And it's called How Scotland Invented the Modern World. And I was just amazed about the contributions that Scots have given to the world. Like, for example, television, penicillin, insulin, the cure for malaria, and even the father of modern economics, Adam Smith. I always thought he was an Englishman. No, excuse me, but he's a Scots.
That's a common mistake, buddy. It's a common mistake. I mean, there are many things. And if you look around the Philippines, for instance, Listerine, that was invented by a Scotsman, John Lister. On the road, that blacktop you'll see in some of the roads here in Manila, that's called tar macadam, and that was John Macadam, who was you know, a Scottish inventor. The kilowatt that you'll find on any ratings for your electrical appliances, the watt came from John Watt, so he invented that term. So there are a million things.
I never knew.
A million things we've invented. So as you say, television, radio, you know, there's so many that we invented.
Yeah, yes.
Now, I have to say that there are other people that also claim that they invented things as well. And everyone's proud of their own nation. We're obviously intensely proud of Scotland, but we certainly invented a hell of a lot of things for such a small nation. So we're not saying we're better than anyone else, but at least we're as good as anyone else.
Yes,
and
that's. And I think it's a mix of courage, of stubbornness, of being, you know, the need for creativity and innovation to survive.
That's right.
That's made you guys excel in so many fields and invent so many things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about, you mentioned that there's so many Scottish people outside Scotland. Why is that?
The Great Migration started after the last battle that was formed in Scotland, which was in 1746. And it was a battle between the Jacobites, who were Catholic largely, and the English armies led by Edward. And at that battle in 1746, after the battle, Scots were punished very heavily by England. And the Highlanders in particular, because they were largely Catholic, and they formed the main body of the army, Bonnie Prince Charlie's army, and they were driven out of Scotland. They were replaced by sheep.
Yes.
And so large land holdings, the people were driven out, they were given nothing, they were just told to leave. So they boarded ships en masse, thousands and thousands and thousands. And they went initially to Canada. So if you look at the western provinces of Canada, they're called Nova Scotia,
yes,
which of course means New Scotland. And Newfoundland, which again was the newfound land for the Scots. So they all came in initially to Canada and also into North America, into America itself, the United States. And for instance, my own family surname, Blair, there are 2,000 families in Scotland. In America, there are 50,000.
Named Blair.
Yeah,
amazing,
50,000. So,
amazing.
and if you follow the progression, you know,
yeah,
they all went west as soon as they can. That was the adventurous nature. So they landed in the eastern colonies, as they were at the time, and they all moved west. So you'll find them everywhere now. So you'll find Highland games everywhere. If you go around Canada, for instance, the influence is very, very strong, particularly in Canada. In a lot of places, they still speak Scottish Gaelic, they play Scottish music. A lot of Scottish artists, they go to America and they follow the trail of the Scots.
Yes.
So they went down the Appalachian Mountains, so down to Kentucky and all the way south, and they're playing the same music. It's the same 8-bar beat. So the Scottish musicians can go there and they can fit right in with the musicians that are there today. They're playing the same music.
And I have to say, we played some Scottish music in the video that we aired just before we came on, and you know, I have to say it's very catchy, it's very lively, and it has a way of just energizing your soul, huh?
Correct. And the dance and the music is really a big part of who we are. It's part of ourselves. It's our culture. We all do it. We all dance. We all love the music. Whether you're 1 year old or 101, we love it. So there's a very deep, abiding love of music and pride in our culture, I would say.
Yes.
So, we're a very patriotic nation.
When we come back for a second segment, we're joined by your colleague Heather Price, and she's past chieftain of the St. Andrew Society. And we'll talk about dancing and all that, and all the cultural activities that you guys are doing here in the Philippines to promote Scottish culture.
Correct.
Thank you very much, Les. So guys, stick around because more of Scotland the Brave when Global Village returns.
It's in our stories and our artistry. It's in our landscapes and our islands. Now is the time to come and find it. Now is the time to come and feel it. Scotland, a spirit of its own.